that cater to your own specific needs. And the easiest thing about it is you just go to our website, log into our digital reservation system, select the workspace, date and time. You can pay online, and then you just show up and you're ready to work. It's super simple, super flexible, and really you just use it based on your own needs without having to feel like you have to come in every single day like most other co-working spaces that do the monthly membership model. We're also partnered with Blue Bottle Coffee. They're our exclusive in-house cafes serving delicious craft coffee in small bites. So if you've never been to our workspace during the business hours, which are 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., 7 days a week, I definitely recommend you check it out. Now, what a lot of you may not actually know about HanaHaus is that we are a subsidiary of the global software company SAP. We actually just launched a brand new digital reservation system that I was mentioning on SAP's business technology platform, which is a huge win for us because now we are an SAP company running on SAP software. And of course, our co-founder of SAP, Professor Dr. Hasso Plattner, was the first one to come up with this idea for HanaHaus back in 2013. And when he came up with this idea for HanaHaus, he was really looking to extend SAP's innovation ecosystem with sort of a tech cafe that would tailor towards all these early stage startups, founders, and entrepreneurs right here in Silicon Valley. And so that's what we've been doing now for the last 8 years since we opened in 2015. And outside of co-working, we also do these monthly community events to engage the local ecosystem, bring people together, share knowledge and ideas, and bring their dreams to life. So tonight we have a very special event with some very cool speakers talking about a fascinating topic related to the future of work. That is the 4-day work week, right? Who doesn't want to work one day less? So first off, I'll introduce our moderator, Mr. Chris Ye. He is a longtime HanaHaus regular. He's moderated quite a few of these events in the past. He's a New York Times bestselling author. He's also the co-founder of the Blitzscaling Academy. He's an excellent moderator. It's always a pleasure to have you, Chris. And then, of course, joining him on stage, we have Alex Soojung-Kim Pang. He is a 3-time best-selling author. He's the Director of Research and Programs at the 4-Day Week Global, which is a nonprofit that focuses on this concept of the 4-day work week. And he'll be joining us to talk about the 4-day work week. And then lastly, I just want to give a big shout out to Corentin Kremet. He is Orka CEO and co-founder. He is the sponsor of this event, and he helped organize and collaborate with me on making this happen. So give him a big round of applause. And with that, maybe I'll just hand it right over to Alex and Chris, and we'll get this conversation kicked off, yeah? All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Colin. Very important question. Since I didn't read the invitation very correctly, at what point in time do we get kicked out? Because we have a lot of hardworking people who are staying late here on a house. I want to make sure that we are respectful of their time. 8:30. All right. So therefore, we should probably make sure that we have our conversation, open it up to questions and answers. And what would you say, Corentin? Finish up by 8 so that people have time to chat and discuss. Sounds good to you? All right, perfect. Awesome. Well, again, thank you guys so much for coming out on a Thursday night when I guess there's Netflix to be watched or something like that. I don't know. I'm so delighted to be joined on stage by Alex. We've gotten a chance to meet here at HanaHaus, a wonderful place. And what is so fascinating is this topic. I mean, this topic has been around for a while, but it is more relevant than ever. There's more and more companies that are doing it. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. I love to have people learn about the people who are on stage. So I know you have an interesting background, where you grew up and how it affected the work that you're doing today. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So first of all, thank you all very much for coming. This is it's always really gratifying as an author to actually have people show up at events like this. So well done. I'll try and make it worth your while. So I was born here and then grew up partly in Brazil. My dad was a Latin Americanist, and so down there doing field work and stuff, and then spent the rest of my childhood in the South, in Tennessee and Virginia, and then came back here after grad school, wondered why we'd ever left, and have pretty much been here ever since.
What happened to your Southern accent?
So I went to school up north and worked very hard to get rid of it. So
does it ever come out when you're mad?
Sometimes. So I mean, I do say y'all, and I have an unusual knowledge of Allman Brothers and Lynyrd Skynyrd sort of albums.
Freebird.
Yeah, so it resurfaces in sort of in some odd ways.
So here you are, you're growing up in Brazil and the South after having been born in the Bay Area, and you make your way back here, for which we're very grateful. But what brought you to this particular topic, right? What made you say, this is what I'm going to spend time? You're a smart guy, you can research a lot of things. Why this one?
Right, so I had, in graduate school, I did a sort of PhD in history of science and technology. And so I was really interested in essentially scientific practice, right? Sort of how it is that people actually sort of work at the bench or in the field to sort of create new knowledge. And then in my work here, first at Institute for the Future and then SRI, where I did technology forecasting and kind of future stuff, again, an awful lot of that stuff was about sort of the intersection of technology and work trends and demographics. So it's a set of questions that has interested me for quite a long time. The 4-day week specifically comes out of an earlier book that I wrote called Rest, which was about the hidden role of hobbies, leisure, vacations, all kinds of downtime in the lives of really creative and prolific people, and why it is that that turns out to be essential for understanding why it was that everyone from Charles Darwin to Beethoven to Rosalind Franklin to Stephen King sort of achieved what they achieved. That book was a lot of fun to write, but when I was promoting it, I always got the question, all right, so this is cool if you are a Nobel Prize winner, but what about everybody else, right? How do they put this into practice? And having written that book, I actually didn't have a very good answer to that question. And so I started basically looking for answers, and spent some time sort of with places that were installing nap pods and doing some other things of that sort, and then stumbled on these companies that were starting to moving to 4-day work weeks, which is particularly companies that are cutting working hours without reducing salaries. So you're not prorating, you're doing it for everybody. So it's not just something that you have to kind of make a case for, but the entire organization does it. And you're also not cutting corners in terms of customer delivery or other kinds of output. These were companies that were all over the world in a whole bunch of different industries, though the early adopters very much were in industries in which overwork was the norm, that had big issues with recruitment and retention and burnout. So like software, financial services, Michelin-starred restaurants, and none of them knew about each other. And that, as a futurist, you're always looking for what you call weak signals, right? Which are these little interesting indicators of people doing something that might turn into a movement in a few years. Seeing this in several continents, different industries at different scales, that really felt to me like a great weak signal that also answered the question, how do you put more rest, how do you give rest to everybody? Well, you do it by changing organizations, by changing work for everyone. So that's how I got to sort of write the book.
So some dumb questions, because nobody likes to ask dumb questions, so it's better to have the moderator ask them. Dumb question number one. When companies go to a 4-day work week, is it the same 4 days for all the employees, or is it different?
It varies depending upon who you are. So there are some firms that will just close, on Fridays for everyone. And generally, so when given the choice, about 60% of people will choose to take Fridays off, another 20% Mondays, and then the rest are sort of midweek. That's generally about the same. In the 300 or so companies that I've looked at, about 60% of them, everybody's on the same day. Then, if you are, on the other hand, if you've got service level agreements, you've got, a customer service team, they want to stay open 5 days where they have to, you do a rota, right? You might have, one team doing Monday through Thursday, another Tuesday through Friday, or you've got a couple people who are on call. and it works that way. And then there are various other versions of it. So for nurses, for example, in places that have moved from 8-hour shifts to 6-hour shifts. So they're still working 5 days, but fewer hours each day. And then people get creative with other kinds of variations of it. But one of the striking things about it is that, it's a bit like, if anyone here is a baker, you go into a bakery and there are an amazing number of different things that you can create just with a few simple ingredients, right? Flour, water, yeast, sugar. And companies likewise are taking a few basic design principles for how to shorten the work week and coming up with a whole bunch of different models for it that work for them depending upon who their clients are, the rhythm of the market, the nature of the work, etc.
Dumb question number 2. You mentioned that this is not companies, maintaining the same number of hours. It's not 4 10-hour workdays. It's 4 8-hour workdays, whatever that means. But I find that many of these companies, the exact workday is kind of nebulous. Are they actually just working harder on those 4 days, or is it truly 4 similar days?
Well, I'm waiting for the dumb questions, but still. Now, I think they often are having to work more intensively or with greater intention. By which I mean, lots of them, for example, will restructure the workday so that every day or several times a week you do things like have periods for deep focused work. So nobody has to answer the phone. You can get off Slack, you can ignore your colleagues in order to focus on stuff that really matters. Because as we all know, that one quick question that turns into a 10-minute, side conversation takes easily 15 or so minutes for you to recover from and get back into kind of deep work. Likewise, they might ring fence, meeting times, things like that. So that, does that mean that people are working more intensively? In a sense you are, but you have a greater degree of control over it. So what the research is telling us is that even in places where people talk about having to be more focused or to be more disciplined about the work, there isn't a sense that, it doesn't feel intensive the way that it does when you're facing a really terrible deadline and your manager is yelling at you, right? You still have control over how you're going to work. So that's the answer.
Got it. And then in thinking about this, obviously, 4-hour work week, 4-day work week, 4-hour work week is something else entirely. Different author. But the 4-day work week, it's something that sounds really cool. And a lot of people would say, oh, well, we should do this in order to make our employees happier. It's because we want to build a better culture. But are there hard-headed business reasons for adopting a 4-day work week? Are there advantages that you have documented in your research that indicate why this might be a good idea, even for somebody who's like, oh, yeah, I don't care. I'm going to work my employees all I want. What? This will make me more money? Tell me more.
Right. So the co-founder of 4-Day Week Global, where I run programs and consulting, was co-founded by a guy named Andrew Barnes, who implemented this at his company, Perpetual Guardian. And he tells the story that he was really interested in improving performance, and that he has a finance background. This is like a wills and trust insurance financial advisory sort of place. So they have incredibly good metrics about individual performance. And so for him, it was about figuring out how to boost retention, how to become more of, how to compete against kind of sexier financial services. No one goes into wills and people when they're growing up don't say, I want to work for a wills and trust, company. And so both in the short run, in terms of increased efficiency or kind of productivity per person, but also in secondarily, things like higher rates of retention, lower levels of burnout, improvement in your your competitiveness. There are a variety of both direct and indirect monetary benefits that companies see.
So let's picture somebody, I don't know, let's just call him Jamie Dimon, somebody who is very intent, it seems, on having people work super long hours, preferably in a physical office. What do you say to somebody like Jamie Dimon, who is just like, nah, I grew up and everyone worked hard and FaceTime was important. I did it and everyone should do it. What do you say to somebody like that?
Right. Well, I think that if you are working in an industry that has developed an amazingly efficient system for recruiting smart people or of generating enormous amounts of money off of working them enormously long hours, and then casting their desiccated hulks back to business school, and then getting in the next, when you've got a pipeline that efficient, it's really hard to make the case that you ought to change that up. However, let's put it this way, the people who actually do this themselves, like the guys, one of the people I talk about in the book is a restaurateur, trained under Gordon Ramsay at 11.
We know he's a big softie.
Okay. It opens, he has one of, his restaurant actually in Edinburgh was just named one of the 100 best restaurants in the UK. So, but he talks about how, this is a guy who grew up working 15, 16-hour days for weeks on end, and for him, and for lots of the people who lead these initiatives, I think they are convinced by a couple things. One of them is that this is, they reach a point in their careers where they've done this for years and it no longer feels sustainable. And they've also done it long enough, they've been in the industry long enough so that they feel like, actually there's a lot of stupid stuff in the way we normally work, and I can figure out how to do it better. And so, and I've lost half my development team, or 3 sous chefs have quit in the past year, or something else is happening that tells me that if we keep going the way that we are, the wheels are going to come off this place in the next year, or I'm going to have a heart attack. So very often they've faced these kinds of everyday existential challenges. And then for bigger organizations who, it has been more about seen as either an extension of things like, other programs that have sought to improve work-life balance or gender representation in their companies, or they are, they see the 4-day week along with hybrid and work from home or remote as one of several things that could define the future of work at, at company X, and they're trying to figure out which of these works best for them. So, and so that's, so if, now, of course, if working in this other way, has just bought you your 3rd vacation home, that's a powerful argument to just keep things the way that they are. So, just a harsh reality, but true.
Fair enough. Well, let's check in with our audience, because I always like to see what they think of what they're hearing. How many people in the audience currently work a 4-day week? How many people have adopted a 4-day week? All right. I love it. I see a couple of people have done so. Anybody who's like, no, I'm going 3. Forget 4. 4 is too much. I'm going 3 or less. Maybe. Okay. How many people are working a 5-day week? So everyone's working a 6-day week or a 7-day week? Is that pretty much it? Boy, that's a tough crowd. So you're literally, this is like Daniel and the Lions Den, these people, but on the other hand, they came here, so they must be intrigued by the possibility of not working 7 days a week. What do you think? Is that typical of the audiences that you speak with?
Around here, yeah. So no, totally normal. No, I think that one of the things that I have seen in the last several years has been a shift from, the initial reaction to the idea of the 4-day week being, this is absolutely the stupidest idea. This clearly was invented in the Hugo Chavez, Institute for Economic Disruption or something. Or, in Britain, it's the Labour Party, John McDonnell, et cetera. To now, I think, a sense that, yeah, there are plenty of places that are doing it, and the question now is, would it work here, right? Given my workforce, or the particular needs of my clients, the way that, what we're making, our ambitions, and it's and so even companies or people working at places that are, that traditionally have done very long hours, there is at least there's definitely a greater openness to the to it than there has been in the past. And I think part of the reason is that we've seen some extremely successful companies doing this, right? I mean, there were in the tech world in Korea, for example, there's a company called Woowa Brothers that they're sort of like DoorDash or Deliveroo. And they started cutting their working hours in 2015 or so, at a point, and over the next 5 years, continued to do so. While their revenues went up tenfold, and eventually they were sold to some Singaporean company for something like $4 billion. So they are the most spectacular example of proof that even in very hard-charging tech companies with big growth ambitions, that it's even there it's possible to do that and to see great and to still achieve great results.
I was driving in the past couple of days. We were picking up my daughter from college, and my wife had me put a Beatles CD in. We actually have a car that's old enough to have a CD player. And they were playing the Beatles, singing 8 days a week. And I can picture Elon Musk saying to himself, all right, where's this 8th day? How do I make everyone work it? So I'm really struck by, yes, it definitely seems like there are more and more companies adopting the 4-day work week, but then there are more and more of these companies going the opposite direction, trying to fetishize working constantly. How do you counteract that?
How do you counteract? That's an excellent question. We have had decades of a set of interlocking trends that have made overwork seem inescapable and inevitable, right? I think that 50 years ago, success in America was you start at the bottom, you work your way up, you pay your dues, and then you finally reach the top of the corporate ladder. There was a point in America where the two biggest companies, General Motors and General Electric, were both run by guys named Charlie Wilson, who both started out in the mailroom, right? From about, I think like the days of Apple and the financial explosion of the early 80s, that model was replaced with one where success is something that happens incredibly quickly, the Forbes 30 under 30, and that happens through a combination of good market timing and Herculean, working Herculean numbers of hours. That's what success looks like now, right? It's either Lambos or food stamps, as they say in the fintech world. And then, combined with that, you've had, and in other professions, a growing precarity of work, and the growth of the importance of economic sectors and forms of work in which it's really difficult to know when to turn off, right? The factory whistle doesn't doesn't go off. The sun doesn't go down and you come in from the fields, and so that has contributed to making it harder to know when to shut off, and I think created a sensibility that maybe actually to be really successful you shouldn't. So how do you counter this? I think that it is to some degree a slow process, but it's also one that I think taps one of the reasons the 4-day week movement has been successful is that there were a lot of people who have grown up in this world who recognize that like the founders who've done it already, there's a lot of stuff in this world that we could actually do better. And that this sort of the working 6 days, the 70-hour weeks, this is not just a logical response to market opportunities, but often comes from poor management, bad planning, overly demanding clients, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that, this stuff is actually fixable. That the fact that we have built our careers working in open plan offices that are essentially carnivals of distraction, working in ways in which we're essentially carrying our offices around in our pockets, does not mean that this gives us a set of tools that we have tended to use in ways that have made work more central to our lives and made us created incentives to working more, but they can be used in other ways. And the final thing is, I think the pandemic, for all of the bad stuff that it did, I think showed a lot of companies that we can actually change how we work faster and more profoundly than we ever thought possible. I had a conversation once with a firm that had moved to a 4-day week, and the founder said, in January 2020, work from home was the hill I would die on. I absolutely knew that we could never do that, and my people proved me wrong in about 2 weeks. After that experience, it's really difficult to say, this thing can never happen here, because for a lot of places, the biggest change already happened. It also opens up the question of what else can we change, not in response to a pandemic, but in order to actually make work better. And one of the most powerful ways to make work better is to actually give people more time and to change how you work so that everybody has more time. So.
Now, again, love the audience interactivity. So question, how many people here feel like they're working less than before the pandemic? Okay. How many people feel like, one brave man, how many people here feel like they're working about the same from before and now? And how many people feel like they are working more post-pandemic than before the pandemic?
Really interesting. Huh.
What do you think of that?
First thought is that there is research that says that work from home or remote work has further blurred the boundaries between work and non-work time in ways that have increased working hours. So, it was when your commute consists of moving from one side of your couch to the other side of your couch, it's it gets harder than ever to put the laptop, to close up the laptop and to actually declare yourself done for the day. So I'm not terribly surprised. Plus, we're in Palo Alto, so of course it's like the world capital of overwork. So.
Well, let's consider that. So let's say I am one of these fine people in the audience who is working 7 days a week and who feels like they're working more than before the pandemic. What are the steps that I could take as an individual? What if I'm not the CEO of the company? I can't just sort of say, let's do a 4-day work week. What do you advise individual people to do to start moving in this direction?
So first off, I think that the collective action is really a superpower for all of us. And that an awful lot of what I see that explains the success of 4-day week companies comes from the fact that everyone recognizes that we're all share the same problems with overwork, with burnout, with outmoded, inefficient processes in the office. That, as Gloria Mark, whose new book is really terrific, explains, the average knowledge worker loses something like 2 to 3 hours of productive time every day to overly long meetings, to poorly used technologies, and to distractions and interruptions. And so if you can just get a handle on those 3 things, in a sense, to paraphrase William Gibson's famous line about the future already being here, it's just not evenly distributed, the 4-day week is actually already here. It's just buried underneath sort of these sort of outmoded ways of working or thoughtless ways of working. And so I would say that that if you can begin to work on those for yourself and for your team, then you can begin to recover some of that time. I think the big challenge is that we are often directed to find individual solutions to the problems of time management, overwork, burnout, etc. The problem is that these are structural and organizational problems, not individual ones, right? You are not, the odds are you are not burned out because you are doing it wrong. You're burned out because of a combination of sort of moral injury, sort of old practices, bad leadership, sort of inadequate leadership, etc. And we all have these challenges. And the most powerful, sustainable way to fix them is to fix them together. And so ultimately, I think that maybe the most powerful thing you can do as an individual is to attack these less as an individual. Sort of to start organizing your office as opposed to like sneaking out of it so that you can actually get some work done.
In other words, you want to catalyze people creating a movement, and what you try to do is to write the playbook for that movement to help people self-organize.
Exactly.
Well, let's test something out here. So you are the advocate for the 4-day work week. Walk us through your 4-day work week. How do you spend your time over the course of those 4 days, and which day do you take off?
So I will confess that I don't do a 4-day week. I do sort of something a little bit different, mainly because I'm probably doing.
Please tell us you don't do a 5-day week.
No. I'm doing like 30 hours a week, but I've got, we've got companies in Europe that we're working with and, sort of Singapore and Australia. So I've got a few super early mornings and then some sort of evening things and then a big chunk of time in the middle of the day. So usually this really breaks down into sort of a couple hours that are for dealing with clients, et cetera, and then a couple hours of sort of focused work where, essentially it's, most of that is writing and kind of thinking about stuff, and then a couple more hours of sort of meetings on the other side of the world. In between, I have 2 dogs who have a need for sort of several walks a day, even though they're fairly elderly, and it's a rhythm that suits that suits me fairly well. So that's so even though it's not 4 days, it does work out to sub 40 hours, and it's a combination that works fairly well for me.
Now, important question: do you take naps during the day?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, no. I talk about naps in sort of my book Rest, and I am now unapologetic about them. And they are naps are phenomenal, and I think that they are. It used to be fairly recently that actually napping in the office was something that everyone did. I think into the 90s in Japan, there were set nap times. There were also set nap rules, right? You had to do it at your desk. You slept as long as the boss slept, and then of course. But however, it was a thing that that was sanctioned. And I started doing this actually when I was researching my book Rest, and it turns out to be something that is, I think it is great and restorative, and I recommend it to everyone, not just toddlers.
Well, I echo that recommendation. I believe very strongly in naps. I, of course, as I usually do, took a nap today. I had a couple days this week when I couldn't take a nap. I felt very off, very unfortunate. Now, the thing about taking naps is that, of course, it's better if your company has a napping policy and the like. But even if you don't have a napping policy, you can take naps as long as you either hide them or you are willing to have everyone think you're eccentric. And since most people think I'm eccentric anyways, I went with option number 2.
There you go. So well done.
So we talked a little bit about some of the changes that hit new technologies, the pandemic. But, the thing that is on everyone's minds and everyone's talking about right now is artificial intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence. How many people in Silicon Valley have heard artificial intelligence or AI too many times in the past week, right? It's endless. And then we got people like my old friend Elliot Kowski saying it's so dangerous, we need to call airstrikes down on data centers. And I just wonder, from the perspective of the 4-day work week, what role does AI play in all this? What do you think it's going to do to this world of work?
Okay, so first of all, I think one of the things that you can see is technology playing sort of an essential role in creating free time for people and for organizations carving out opportunities that allow them to give time back to people. So, for example, Iceland and the United Arab Emirates have both moved their public sectors to shorter work weeks. The UAE, it's mainly 4.5 days, though a couple places are doing 4. But one of the things that they did before implementing that was this pretty big e-government initiative that allows you to do things like, pay your income taxes on your smartphone kind of thing. So basically what that means in both countries is lots of things you can do 24/7 from, from your laptop, which makes it a little bit, provides some air cover for changing up working hours and maybe closing offices a little more. However, in most companies, what you see is, number one, that a lot of the work of implementing a 4-day week is actually done at the team and individual level, right? It's not consultants parachuting in and saying, here's how you ought to use your software, here's how you automate this, et cetera, but rather giving people the responsibility for figuring out how to do this themselves. One of the things that you do see is an awful lot of automation of less interesting tasks, but nobody automates their own jobs out of existence, right? What you do is you offload the stuff that you don't want to do so that you can focus on the stuff that you really care about or you feel like you're really good at. What that teaches us, I think, with AI is that it's not about just AI is this kind of anonymous, impersonal thing that's kind of parachuting into the workplace. Rather, the big question about whether it can enable a 4-day week, whether it will destroy jobs, depends on who it is who controls its deployment, who it is who gets to make choices about which things get handed off to ChatGPT, where in the work process it is, and so on. If it's Jamie Dimon, versus the first-year associate, you're going to get 2 very different sets of answers and strategies for how to use the technology. But I think that I am already beginning to hear some stories in advertising agencies or marketing places about using starting to experiment with ChatGPT to draft stuff. I think that a lot of the content still comes out in a sort of uncanny valley of things that sound like advertising copy, but which still need human work. But I think that it does suggest that it will represent another set of tools that can be used to give more time back to people. But of course, it could also be used to make those people redundant. And it's just a question of who it is who controls how that technology gets into the workplace.
Not entirely certain that is an optimistic answer, but it probably is a truthful one.
Yeah, I think, okay, so the other historical example is with machine tools in the 1940s and 1950s, right? Machine tools, machinists who operate these things, they're incredibly skilled, it takes years of apprenticeships to make these pieces to thousands of an inch tolerances. Those are the people you want like building the blades for your jet engine kind of thing. In the 40s, there were two major kinds of attempts to automate that work. There was something called numeric control, which were, you essentially hook up computers and you program them to operate the tools. And then there was something called record playback, which essentially recorded the actions that a skilled machinist performed. And it turns out different machinists work just differently enough so that basically everyone's record playback was a faithful copy of their work, but it's like it only worked on their particular setup. So it was a way, it turned out, of empowering those workers. Numeric control, in contrast, was much more general purpose. And for a variety of reasons, there was, you saw, basically in places that had stronger unions, you saw, and more empowered workers, or more respect for skilled labor, you saw record playback becoming more of a thing. And then in other places or industries, it was numeric control, and essentially those skilled machinists were like de-skilled and ultimately ultimately lost their jobs and sort of their power in the workplace.
Which of those set of companies did better? The ones that preserve jobs or the ones that destroy jobs?
In the long run, the ones that preserve the jobs. So the bigger part of the story is that in the 50s there were sort of robust machine tool industries in the U.S., in Germany, and in Japan. U.S. went very heavy on numeric control, and ultimately, they did well for a while and ultimately got hammered. And a lot of the really, really sophisticated systems now are made outside the U.S., in part because of the loss of a whole generation of skilled work that informed the use and ultimately the design of those systems.
So I think that is, a wonderful clarification, because I think the bigger picture presents a more optimistic image of how things are going. Not that optimism is always the right answer. So I think we're getting low on time, so I want to make sure I ask the following question, which is one of my favorite questions to ask, which is, if I were a perfect interviewer, what question would I have asked that I failed to ask tonight?
Ooh, that is itself an excellent question. I think, I suppose, it might be a question about how 4-day weeks play out differently for men versus women. And
how do 4-day weeks play out differently for men versus women?
There you go. That's a great question. That's a terrific question. And so it's great for everybody, but it's transformative for women, is what the data is telling us. In a couple ways, right? Number one, that for this is particularly true for for parents, that in the U.S. and the U.K. at least, there's research about what they call the fatherhood premium and the motherhood penalty, which is that basically especially in bigger companies, even in well-meaning ones with apparently progressive policies, when you become a father, this has no impact on your earnings or your rates of promotion compared to your unmarried peers. For women, on the other hand, it begins to slow down, both promotion, also career opportunities, long-term earnings, et cetera. What we're seeing in 4-day week companies is, first of all, that the kinds of strategies that advantage fathers or people without kids go away, because it's no longer the case that you can get ahead by being the last person to leave in your office. That's no longer a cool thing, right? Because the objective is to make it possible for everybody to leave at the end of the day Thursday and enjoy sort of the long weekend. So if you are someone who needs 12 hours to complete a task and someone else needs 6 hours, the question is, how can we help you become like this other person, not what cool thing can we now elevate you to because you're here longer. So simply the use of time kind of signals differently in ways that sort of eliminate one of the advantages that 24-year-olds without lives have sort of traditionally had. Another place in which it turns out to be really sort of making a difference is in retention, not surprisingly, but also in recruitment and hiring in the following way. That I've heard from several places that what they look for in new hires is now different. That your ideal worker is no longer the 25-year-old who doesn't have pets and you can ask them to take on extra work and they're going to say yes. Being able to work 12 hours is no longer impressive. What you need in a 4-day week company is someone who has a high degree of professional knowledge, maybe more experience than people you've brought in before, who also have who have both a combination of empathy and ruthlessness when the time is right, who can prioritize, who can focus on one task, knock it out, move on to the next thing, and then get out of there because they have a hard deadline. Who is it who has this particular combination of professional skills, of work experience, and sort of soft skills? Working moms. And so in these companies, the motherhood premium, or the motherhood penalty, gets converted into a motherhood premium. And that is, I think, a really interesting thing we're seeing. And if it holds, could be, I think, really promising in the long run, both for, helping to address some very stubborn issues around gender equity and promotion in the workplace, but also because at the macroeconomic level, it suggests a way to unlock a lot of value or keep in the to keep in the economy a lot of productive value that currently gets lost when, with your, baby, you have to go on to 3 days a week, or you have to, or your career gets derailed, and it takes years to recover. So, long answer to what was really an excellent question.
I got to admit, it's having a kind of workplace where working moms and parents and other people like that thrive versus our current world where we try to focus on people with no life, insecurity, and massive overcompensation. That seems like a better approach to work in general.
I would agree.
Well, with that, what we're going to do is we're going to open up some really good questions, because we're going to get questions from the audience. Now, Colin will have a microphone, and he'll go around. I will also tell you that Colin has that required degree of ruthlessness to make sure that when you're asking a question, you are actually asking a question and not, in fact, pitching your company, soliciting for your venture capital fund, attempting to recruit people for your religion, or anything else. So with that in mind, who would like to ask a question? Yes.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Alex. I am deep. I have no religion. I have no VC firm. I have no VC fund, neither receiving nor giving out any at this point. So I work a lot with startups, and as a startup is hustling to make all this happen, I do believe in this idea of being effective versus efficient, and that just because you work 80 hours a week doesn't mean you work smart 80 hours a week. What would you say to these newly minted startups that are in this downturn economy post-May 2022, where the VCs have cut the check size by half, and they want to see cash flow positive from these startups? What would you say to them about this 4-day work week?
First off, I think there were, I would point to the various companies that have made this work, but I think also that and that they demonstrate that if done thoughtfully, particularly by people who have come out of, the places where, they have the experience of working in enormously long hours, et cetera, that implementing a 4-day week from from the beginning is a great way, first of all, great way to recruit talent potentially at a level that you couldn't get as our startup, and for keeping people during those essential years where you are building your product, you're building the first maybe a couple generations of it, and where you need where the loss of one or two people can be an existential threat. So my favorite example of this probably is Cockroach Labs in New York, and they were founded a few years ago by a couple folks who had been at Google and then at Square, and they do, I want to try and get this right, like cloud native SQL sort of SQL stuff, which apparently is incredible. Like making it cloud first is incredibly interesting if you do this kind of thing. I don't know why.
Apparently, you're not a computer scientist.
No. Anyway, however, one of the things that I spent some time with them, and they talked about how, first of all, we're all in our 30s, and and the physical ability to work those kinds of long hours, or the deluded belief that you can do so and be productive, has kind of burned out. Second, we don't have the money to compete with our former employers, on salaries. However, we can offer serious people a 4-day week and be really serious about it, and and this has allowed us to build a team that is really extraordinary. And finally, when you're trying to solve really difficult engineering problems, which we are, having that kind of extra time, having that having that leisure time is more valuable than staring at your computer from hours 10 to hours 14. There are too many nights we've spent just like grinding metal, trying the same thing over and over again because you're too tired to remember that you tried to solve the problem this way an hour ago and it didn't work. And they closed their latest round, I think, late last year, a couple $100 million or so. Their valuation is now like upwards of $2 billion. But anyway, there are a few VCs, including the ones somewhere here who backed Woo-Wah Brothers, who are bucking their own industry and looking at firms like this and saying, yeah, this makes sense. And we can see how working this way will build benefit, will generate value for this company that's trying to do something extraordinarily difficult.
Next question.
Hi everyone, I'm Feliana. I'm a founder. I'm not gonna pitch. Thank you very much, first of all, for your sharing about 4 days work week, as well as effectivity, and also supporting mental health. What I would like to ask here, actually, I used to live in France. I don't know if you are familiar with 35 hours weekdays. And my question is, comparing to the 4 days work week, what do you think finally, I don't try to say what is better, maybe what is the advantage and disadvantage of this? Because France already thought about that like about 20 years ago, since early 2000. And within 4 days work week, do you think that we still can get burned out in a way, or like get overwhelmed? For example, we work 4 days in a row without sleeping and stuff. It's still like we can get burned out from that. But if we just like keep 38 hours, stop, and that's it. So you need to rest in the rest of the time. But maybe we cannot make everything done within 38 hours. So what is your thought on it? I'm really curious. Thank you very much.
So I think that the French case, there's people who know a lot more about labor law, et cetera, in France, have smarter things to say about the way in which carve-outs and various sorts of industry exclusions and exceptions have to some degree undermined the promise of 35 hours there. But I think that the interesting question I'm hearing here is a 4-day week better better for people in terms of recovery, burnout, et cetera, than, let's say, shorter work days, right? The answer is there are people who have passionate opinions about this, but we don't have a lot of data. And there are some creative firms that move to 6-hour days on the grounds that working all out for 6 hours is a really good day. And those last 2 hours, if you did a 4-day week, you're not really gonna produce very much. I am hoping to find or to convince a company that's big enough to like have the Hamburg office work 4-day weeks and London to do 6-hour days, and you measure the heck out of both of them so that we actually have some real data about this. I think they are both, at this point, we can say that any reduction is better than no reduction, but which one, but once you get into like fine tuning, which one's better over the longer run, we just don't yet have the data.
Great, thank you guys. Thank you for coming and doing this presentation. This is great. I'm wondering what the difference in wage expectation is between companies who adopt the 4-day work week versus those who don't. I can expect that a 20% reduction in the hours per week leads to some expectation that there's going to be a reduction in the wage too, or that in the negotiation process with new employees that they're going to be less pressed to try to push for that extra 10% gain.
So first off, the companies that I've been studying don't cut wages as part of this transition. Whether they now there is an interesting question as to whether new folks are more likely to bargain for maybe additional money versus additional time or something like. Are the negotiating strategies different in when you're approaching a 4-day week company versus another? I have no idea. It's a really interesting question, though. I mean, I think that we know more about why people choose these companies and just talking to them about it. And I think that that it is the case that it turns out ironically to be an easier sell for more senior people than for younger ones, right? People who are right out of university, all their friends are working 60-hour weeks, they're getting together and humble bragging about how busy they are, and you don't want to be the one person left out of this. On the other hand, once you've been in your job for a few years, you understand it, you kind of understand you have enough experience so that you know what works for you, and you're beginning to understand what works in the industry and what really doesn't. At that point, the value prop, and you're kind of maybe getting to the point where you're thinking about having kids and stuff, the value proposition of the shorter work week suddenly becomes an awful lot clearer. So anyway, that was thank you by the way for not applying that ruthlessness to my answers as you are to people's questions. So
I think we have time for one more question because we want to leave time for this wonderful raffle we have. Colin, have we already got the person with the last question?
Good day. Thanks for coming down today. My name's Ryan. Thank you, Alex, for giving the talk about the 4-day work week, and Chris for moderating it. I have a question about survivorship bias, right? So I'm curious, in your extensive research on companies that have adopted the 4-day work week, are there companies that have failed to adopt it? I would imagine that clients, you mentioned earlier, like busy clients, pushy clients can be a big factor for having to extend that. But I'm curious if there are any other factors that you see that kind of work into the 4-day work week, failing in certain of these companies.
Right. Okay. First of all, client reaction is not a factor in the failure of 4-day week companies. I have talked to, and this is something that everybody worries about when they start, right? That the clients are going to, or they're going to hate it, and they're not going to understand it, and they're going to flee, right? There's a great book called Sleeping with Your Cell Phone by Leslie Perlow that came out a few years ago. And it was looking at Boston Consulting Group. And just in one division, they implemented like no email Wednesdays. And the partners were absolutely convinced that the Earth was going to spin off its axis and crash into the sun once they did this. And they implemented it very quietly. And 6 months later, did a client survey. Clients hadn't even noticed that this had been implemented. Now, in the 4-day-week companies, they tend to be much more upfront about explaining, this is what we're doing, this is what's not changing. If there's a genuine emergency, we're gonna, we'll still pick up the phone. We have these contingencies in place. This is how the work is gonna happen. And in talking to 300 companies, I've heard exactly one story of one client who said, no, this isn't gonna work for us, we gotta go, we're gonna switch to someone else. And one prospective client who said, nah, this is or I need someone who's gonna sleep with their, with the phone under their pillow. Instead, it turns out clients are having, clients are dealing with all the same problems that you are. They've got challenges with burnout, or they're having trouble recruiting people, they got retention issues. And so if you can find a solution to this, then it turns out that could potentially be something really valuable to them. Now, other circumstances under which trials fail. Occasionally, there were some communication issues early on that it's basically a failure to establish that this is not an entitlement, but it's something that everyone has to work for. And if you get a couple people who essentially are willing to be game theory hard asses and bet that they can free ride and everybody else wants this enough so that they will do what's necessary to make it work, that can completely undermine it. The other condition is the 4-day week doesn't die, but is killed, by which I mean you get a new CEO, new team, or change of government, and an easy way to make your mark always is to kill off a signature program of your predecessor.
Results-oriented work environment at Best Buy.
Right, we're getting serious again, we're going, butts in seats, put on the coffee, et cetera, et cetera. And none of this namby-pamby stuff, we're gonna be delivering, deliver, just like we did in the old days. So, but having said that, I would love to learn more about about the failures. Companies, not surprisingly, are more willing to talk about their successes than about their stumbles. And so, but, I think as the movement grows, we will find more cases of places where this really doesn't work, and and I hope we'll get a better understanding of why that is. Because it's very much the case that, we're studying the planes that have, we're studying the holes in the planes that have landed. And maybe we can learn some things from the ones that haven't.
Wonderful. Well, I think it is time for our very grand raffle. If Quentin, you might come up to the stage and help us out.
Yeah. Well, hello everyone. Thanks a lot for coming. Thanks for Alex and Chris to do this wonderful talk. Thanks a lot. And thanks to HanaHaus for hosting us. This is already the third event that we organize with Orka. So really happy to be here. So we've got a bunch of books. So let's get to it.
Do you want us to hold some of the books, perhaps?
Chris, your book. And Diana is here. Diana, I'm working with Diana with a program called Click. It's an accelerator for startups and corporates. So who doesn't have a ticket already? Oh, wow, a lot of people missed the tickets. No books for you. You were late.
Oh, no.
So we got a few books. We got Blitzscaling and Work Less, Do More. And also The Alliance from Chris. And Rest. And just a couple of words about Orka. So we do organize distributed teams for entrepreneurs, and we help them to create the products much faster with distributed teams and efficient way to work. So one thing we do, for instance, is very efficient meetings, and happy to help you if you have any any needs. All right, so we're still
And
running
Corentin,
around. We
did
still
you-
have a few.
Quick question, Corentin. Did you ever have a chance to work a 35-hour work week in France, and is it actually a 35-hour work week?
That's a very, 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 very good question. I've been working with people from all around the world for a long time, but I had like a job, in-person job, long time ago, and I think it was about 35, and it was just like 9 to 5 kind of thing. And I think it was, yeah. But it doesn't really feel like, I don't know, just, yeah. All right, so we're still going around.
We're still stalling a little bit. We got more
yeah.
people getting their tickets. Okay.
All right. Oh, yeah, sure. Well, you're busy with the tickets, so yeah. Oh my God, so many. So yeah, so Click is an online program. You can join online, and we organize free events two times a month. We get speakers who are either startups or corporates to share best practices, how to collaborate.
And what is the fine URL at which we could find this service?
So it's going to be
It's corporateacceleratorforum.com/click.
Did you hear that? corporateaccelerator.com/click.
Corporateacceleratorforum.com. I have some notebooks in the back of the website written on there.
Ooh, very exciting. And then while we're at it, Alex, people obviously, there are a few lucky winners who will get these books, but sadly many others will be going home empty-handed, at least in terms of books. Where can they get your books? Where can they follow you and learn more?
You can get the books wherever fine books are sold, and also the sort of large online retailer as well that will deliver books to you. And then in terms of, I am AskPang, AskPang, on pretty much everything. Actually, on anything that I contribute to. I'm mainly actually doing Instagram these days because I've been working on a proposal for a new book, and doing a lot of, and the 4-day week global stuff is taking up a lot of my time, and it is, I feel like actually doing the work rather than tweeting about the work is like the better thing that I can do for myself and for the world. So, but I've got a lot of cute dog pictures on Instagram. So,
But what about TikTok?
I have not gotten in. I am not on TikTok. So, there may be another AskPang on TikTok, but I haven't checked.
Well, if you find AskPang on TikTok, make sure it's the real article, not
Right.
somebody trying to pretend to be Alex. How are we doing on the raffle tickets? We still got a few more? Okay, well, it's almost there.
I should also explain that this is an updated version of Shorter. It's also only available in the UK. So this is
Collector's item.
It's like back in the day when you were really cool if you had the Japanese version of an album. It's exactly like that. It's just as cool. So
All right,
anyway,
I think we're good. So
just so
everybody's
you
got
know.
a ticket? No. All right. Nice. All right. So let's shake it up a little bit, and maybe Chris, you wanna pick the first winner?
Absolutely. All right, so the first winner will be...
And are we raffling
Now, it's a
particular
number.
books, or the person gets to choose?
There's a number. People haven't written their names on it. I just call out the number? Is that right?
Question.
All right.
Let's do Chris's book.
All right,
and your
we'll
book.
we'll start with it. We'll start with one copy of Blitzscaling, and I'm getting old, so I'll have to look carefully at this. 6, 6, 8, 9, 7, 6, 4. Oh my
Welcome.
God, Rob! You've got so many copies of my books. I can't believe you won another one. But still, I'm glad you're having it. Don't you have a signed copy of this already?
All right.
I'll sign another one for you.
Okay, this will be for let's start big. Let's give away a copy of Work Less, Do More. All right, the number is 668 9737. 9737.
There we go. We got
Here
a
we
lucky
go.
winner.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you.
And to redeem this, okay. No,
You should get it signed by the author.
yeah.
Stay.
I will stick around. Why don't we?
Yes, yes.
I'll sign them after all the.
All right, okay. So, Chris,
All
your
right,
turn.
the excitement builds. Only 6 books left. All right, here we go. Okay. No, I like reading it, even though I look old doing it. So we know that it's going to start 66897. And the last 2 digits are 35. 35. There we go. Congratulations. You go. It depends. It's all based on which. I won't mind that you wanted Alex's book more than mine, but that's okay. You might be able to exchange later on.
In the spirit of empowering workers, et cetera, I'll call out the number, but you can choose the book yourself. Okay, 6689 753. 753.
753.
Hey, there we go.
Come on
Hooray.
down.
Which was your first one again?
My first one. That's my first one. Wow, going old school. I like it.
Hey, it's a classic. All right.
Chris.
2 more books, and I cannot. I'm going to be shamed by Alex's example, so I'll let the next person pick which book they like. There are 2 left, 1 of each, and the number is going to be 61. 61. Who's got number 61? Anybody?
All right.
Have you got it? We got it? All right.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Congratulations. Which one would you like? Take your pick. Well, let's see. This is more recent, but this is more on topic for what Alex is writing about. So your choice. All right, The Alliance it is. Thank you so much. All right,
So,
over to you, Alex.
All right, 6689 740. 740.
Number 40.
Number
We got
40.
number 40.
Big 40.
Come on
Big
down.
40. All right. Your choice. There you go.
All right.
You bet.
Chris.
Just
it's
2
getting-
more chances to win. 2 more chances to win. It could still be yours. Shake it up. Shake it up. All right. Here we go. This one is torn up. Content, can you read this one? I'm not sure we can award this one, unfortunately. The number was ripped off. Very sad. Very sad. All right. All right. This one has a number on it, and that number is 71. 71. Oh my goodness gracious. Here we go. Come on up. You only got 1 book left, sadly, and you already have a copy of this one as well, Goody, but that's okay. You can always have another one.
Actually, your book was sold out all over the Bay Area, so it was a bit more challenging to get them.
I apologize for that. I'll try to write a worse one next time.
Okay, last one. 6689 738. 38.
Number 38. 38
Number 38.
special. Anyone? Next one.
38.
Next one.
Wow. Another bite at the apple.
Another
Okay.
chance to win.
This is like the.
And that's the last one already. Wow. All right.
All right. 746. 46. 46.
Well, that's
Hooray!
really
Oh, congratulations. 46.
Here you go.
Also a great defense by the Chicago Bears in 1985.
Go Bears.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone, for coming. Rob, who helped promote the event, is going to invite everyone who want to join to after party at Pizza My Heart down the street. And then we can stay here for a few more minutes and network with each other.
But first, let's give a huge round of applause for our special guest, Alex Payne.
Thanks so much.
Thanks very much. Thanks for coming.
And Rob Quantal, what was this? There is an after party, I hear?
Yeah, at Pizza My Heart. Yeah.
All right, after party at Pizza My Heart on Rob. There we go.